Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear guests, we will be waiting for 1 more minute for all participants to settle down with their access to the system. And then we will have one video of LGMA as an introduction, and then we will start with the agenda and introduction and the rest of the webinar. So thanks for your patience and thanks for joining us. We'll meet in a couple of minutes. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 18th webinar of the Local Governments and Municipal Authorities Constituency Towards Climate Conference in Glasgow, COP26. My name is Yunus Erakan. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy at ICLE Local Governments for Sustainability, who is hosting this event. I'm also acting as the focal point of Local Governments and Municipal Authorities Constituency. So it's a great pleasure and honor for me to take you through this webinar today. Some practical announcements. This webinar is recorded, and we will be also uploading our records on the webpage, and that can be downloadable. In some of our webinars, we have been having guests, but in today's webinar, I will be the both moderator and presenter. So in terms of the format, we would suggest that we will take you through the presentation today, which we hope to finish by maximum 30 minutes. Or 35 minutes. You can, during the webinar, during the presentation, type your questions in the Q&A session or chat box. If it is extremely burning question, we can react immediately. But we prefer also a longer debate in the Q&A session, which will be around 10, 15, 20 minutes maximum. And this session is also informed or shared by the members or the partners of the Local Government and Municipal Authorities Constituency. However, we also know this is also promoted globally on social media. So participants of this webinar may be familiar with the previous sessions. So some of the information may be repetitive for you. So we count on your understanding, but for some newcomers, that's always helpful. We know that. So and in the rest of the webinars that have been had before, you can watch the recordings and access to the presentations in the websites of ICLE and LGMA playlist. You can also find our inputs to the videos of the Paris Agreement anniversary. The citiesandregions.org/COP26 is also our landing page for our activities towards COP26. We will try to keep much more updated on the way forward. The logos below are presented as the working group of local governments and the municipal authorities constituency for the COP26 process. Our constituency is broader than the logos you have seen here, but in every COP, the priorities, the regional engagement is changing, obviously. So we are grateful for all the members of the constituency and the partners. So with that, without further ado, let me start with the presentation by taking the agenda. So the first part is the one that is much more, let's say, traditional information. There are some updates. We will touch upon that. We will regularly track the progress we achieved since the last webinar, which in our case, in this one, it was 23rd of June. And we will spend most of our time on latest updates on the COP26 logistics and agenda. So why is Paris Agreement is important? Because it's a new era in global action. It is unique because it is universal. In the sense that Paris Agreement recognizes local and regional governments and also other stakeholders. That is not the case in the UNFCCC and Kyoto Protocol. The preambular paragraph of Paris Agreement is really unique, and it's a result of our advocacy for decades and decades. So we are important in that sense, and it's not anymore a voluntary process, but it is our duty. 1.5 is a concrete goal that is enshrined in the decision of the on the text of the Paris Agreement, and climate neutrality. These are the two concrete targets that is relevant for all parties who are who have been member of the Paris or who have been ratified, who have ratified the Paris Agreement. Therefore, that's why it is so important. It is giving us much more concrete guidance, and it's also universal. In terms of national governments, the importance that what we are discussing towards COP26 is that none of the first plans of the Paris Agreement, none of the national plans that was in the first one is fitting for Paris Agreement, because they were all drafted or designed before Paris Agreement, before the meeting in Paris in 2015. It's normal because the Paris Agreement has introduced these elements. Of course, NDCs do not reflect on that. Therefore, it's essential, it's a responsibility for all governments, all national governments, to present their new NDCs. And we are happy that we are seeing more and more coming up. And that's why it is important that this has to be done before COP. So the work at home or the success of COP26 depends on success at home. Therefore, regardless of what will happen in the dates in terms of virtual or physical, the real success of Paris Agreement depends on work at home, and local and regional governments, as part of their government institutional frameworks, they should be involved in this process. Local and regional governments, as we said, we are pushing for national governments to be more ambitious, but we're also saying that because we are now in the document itself, the Paris Agreement refers to engagement of all levels of government. The climate action is not anymore a voluntary task. It is a part of our urban development plan. It's part of the commitments at the decided by the councils or the regional or local parliaments. Therefore, it is much more important that we update our local climate plans with the climate neutrality, with 1.5 degree goals, or even adopting declaring climate emergency. For other stakeholders, that is also important. It's not just mitigation and adaptation, the urban poor, the migrants. So the people who are suffering from the fossil era, they should not continue to suffer in this new era. So this should be a universal agenda. This should be a holistic and inclusive agenda, a just agenda. Therefore, it is important that we continue to get our in collaboration with other stakeholders as well. These are reasons why we are giving emphasis to Paris Agreement. The climate conference of parties is a cyclic process. It happens every year. Every year, there's at the end of the year, which is November, December, and national government is hosting this event. And throughout the year, they take the responsibility for the implementation of the decisions. So because of the COVID measures, we have now experiencing the longest presidency mandate, which is now currently under the shoulders of Chilean government. Um, they have usually appointed their presidents, either Minister of Environment or other officials. For the moment, Minister of Environment of Chile is the COP president. The coming host country usually is the one who is the president for the future years and session, and they are responsible to start with the first day of the COP. So as of today, UK government is announced as the president designate, and Right Honorable Alok Sharma is their president. With the Paris Agreement, we have the new procedure, which is called Climate Action Champions, High-Level Climate Action Champions. We have Chilean government, Gonzalo Munoz, and we have Nigel Topping from the UK government. In the UK government modalities, they have introduced a number of new features. They have appointed new advisors on finance, on adaptation. They have regional ambassadors for Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, across the world. They have announced a new appointee, which is Sir David Attenborough. It is announced as the People's Advocate, so it's a new position. And the UK government has created a number of consultative bodies. One of them is Friends of COP, which is advising to Alok Sharma. We have one local government representative. It is the chair of the mayor of Los Angeles and chair of C40, Eric Garcetti. There are several domestic and international councils like Cities and Regions Advisory Council, or devolved administrations ministerial coordination council, or civil society and youth advisory council, which I am invited in my capacity as LGMA focal point. As we said, COP, you can find from the number, it's 26, so it has happened 25 times before. There is definitely a regular agenda, and there are regular engagement opportunities, but there's also priorities of the presidencies. With the UK government recently updated their priorities, there are 4 priorities: mitigation, adaptation, finance, and the 4th one is important because it says collaboration. It refers to collaboration with other levels of government and stakeholders. Therefore, we are excited. And we have defined our roadmap since the last COP in Madrid. We have defined our vision as a towards multi-level action COP. And in that sense, we will go through it in a minute in more details, but this is also how we engage ourselves to the negotiations and the initiatives and the priorities. However, we are now in a virtual mode. Since March 2020, there is no official negotiation taking place. Everything is virtual, and in that sense, after all these months of now settlement of all these processes, we can group the priorities or the modalities in 3 main headings. One, the regular UNFCCC process, which is they have standing committees on adaptation, capacity building, loss and damage. So we are participating as LGMA constituency either to the workshops or meetings. We're submitting our documents. This is a regular process. Then we have the presidency consultations with the presidency initiatives, meetings. Some of them are ministerial, some of them are in technical level. So we are invited time to time or in different modes in each of them as a constituency. So we're trying to provide our inputs. And the 3rd one, which is the action agenda that we call it, is it's a bit also gray area because it's together with the stakeholders, but on behalf of the presidency, the climate action champions are leading this. It's under the Marrakesh Partnership. It has specific pathways, it's specific working groups, but over the past years, Gonzalo Munoz and Nigel Topping introduced new initiatives like Race to Resilience, Race to Zero, and Race to Zero Breakthroughs. These are new modalities. We hope this will feed to the national and global documents, the global agreement, so that the information from the stakeholders or real life, you can say, or from the real economy, all partners of the society can feed into the process that is led by national governments. Obviously, they are the ones who decide and sign, but they should be hearing our inputs and they should benefit from our inputs to the process. Our roadmap, as we said, that it was based on 7 pillars. It was grouped under 4 categories. So first of all, we wanted to make sure there's localization of the Paris Agreement, that we have our commitments for climate neutrality, and we have to engage with NDCs. Over the past years, 18 months, we have seen huge progress in all these with Race to Zero, Race to Resilience, and several NDCs coming up. Independent from Paris Agreement, there are regular UNFCCC agendas, and we're trying to also connect to the other processes like circular economy, nature, food, but also buildings, mobility, and other processes. Then we are trying to introduce new mechanisms, new partners. For example, we would like to come up with a new set of ministerial sessions, not just for trade and environment or energy, agriculture, but also urbanization, for example. And there are more possibilities that this can be possible towards COP or at COP or beyond COP. There is a serious interest. We would like to make sure climate justice and social equity is much more embedded into our efforts, and we will have engagement modalities, especially this year. Especially during this year, the Biden Climate Summit, the announcement from US and Japan and others came up very strongly. These are considered as game changers. In the biodiversity, we have an unbelievable success of the local governments and regional governments with the Secretariat, with the Scottish government, with the UK government. We have seen that their negotiations are almost over. They have already adopted a decision, draft decision, which is subject to final approval, but the biodiversity experience will give us huge input because it's the second time there's an action plan for cities and subnational, a 10-year action plan. And we are in touch with UN Habitat and other partners to call for an urbanization. So these are game changers. Therefore, we are expecting that by the time we are going to COP, the 7 pillars that we announced in December 2019 should be a bit more consolidated. It should be a bit more focused. It should be focused on outcome oriented. So we are suggesting, and we will be discussing with all the members of the LGMA, that we have to prioritize our 4 main headings, or let's say 4 cornerstones. One, the outcome of Glasgow should encourage and welcome the multi-level NDCs as the new normal of the Paris Agreement second phase. This should be part of the decision. This should be part of the declaration. What do we mean with this multi-level NDCs? That we should be committing as local energy governments to our own climate neutrality and climate emergencies, but they should also connect to the NDCs. The NDCs should be taking into account our inputs, and the commitments from national governments should help our commitments on, especially for 2030 targets, and all the partners initiatives should also be streamlined. Second, urbanization, just like agriculture, just like transport, could be a core climate action area that is much more under the responsibility of not just on the local and regional governments, but the national governments, other stakeholders. So the logic could be that we could think about a working program or a process for urbanization. This could also be one of the discussions that can be discussed during the Article 6.8, which is non-market mechanism. If we can convince national governments that if they develop an urbanization which is different than business as usual, they can receive funding for that. So this can be a topic we can discuss. We would like to make sure that within the UNFCCC or outside at the national and global or local level, our climate action should be just, inclusive, holistic, and nature friendly. And it should be including also inviting all these discussions with urban poor. It should be addressing migrants, climate related migrants or other source of migrants, so that it is a holistic approach that whole of society should be embraced. It should be targeting for 2030 and 2050. And last, you may have heard, for those in the LGMA community, there is much more mechanisms coming from UNFCCC. They are asking for our speakers, they're asking for our inputs. We as LGMA should also renew our structure, should renew our modality, so that we follow the second phase of Paris Agreement much more aggressively and much more institutionalized and much more, let's say, concrete in terms of our inputs to the process. Therefore, by the time we reach the COP, we hope we would kick off this new wave of engagement. I see 2 points in the chat box. One is from Heloise from Regions 4. We could also mention NAPS, and not only, and this is definitely, we can definitely include this. It's a very valuable point. And also there can be an outcome about finance, decentralization of finance. Exactly, that's why the second part we would suggest we can discuss on this, but definitely Paris Agreement, finance should come to us, and we will discuss about it on that as well. Thanks for highlighting this, Heloise. So let's continue. So this is the big picture, let's say, in terms of negotiations and the processes. What we have seen over the past 4 weeks, since 23rd of June, is that there was an energy ministerial forum. There were a number of local and regional governments involved in the process. This is good because there's no energy COP. Energy is a bit lost in translation in the UN system. So this year is like food, energy is being discussed at the UN Secretary General's level. Therefore, it's good that our partners, ICLE, C40, UCLG, and many others, they were either committing for new energy compacts or intervening with our inputs, side events or speakers. So that was very good. Asia Pacific Regional Climate Week was hosted in virtually, of course, but under the leadership of the Japanese Minister of Environment and City of Yokohama. There was a strong participation, and a number of side events were hosted by ICLE and regional partners, associations. There were spatial discussions on finance. The Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction had their own also regional consultation. So it was strong. Asia Pacific is one of those regions where we are very, very actively involved, obviously. And on that week, we have been welcoming the launch of the Cities Race to Resilience. It is coordinated by Global Covenant of Mayors. It was a side event, but it is also welcomed by the UNFCCC champions as well. Over these 2 weeks, we had in New York-based diplomats and processes have focused on high-level political forum. Local and regional governments have submitted their regional, their global report to the HLPF. Climate was also discussed in that. A couple of days after those initiatives, there was a spatial launches by partners. First of all, the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance launched the State of Cities Climate Finance. It was evidence on how the finance is flowing to the cities or vice versa. There was another initiative from SLOCAT who coordinated the Transport and Climate Change Global Assessment. There were 10 priority areas, and 5 of them are directly relevant to urban, let's say, communities. Therefore, we are also very happy, and we contributed a lot as ICLE, but also other partners. In last week, or just 10 days before, the Convention on Biodiversity have released the draft of the global post-2020 biodiversity framework, which we welcome, especially in the sense that it recognizes our inputs. As we have said, there is a decision now for a 10-year action plan, second version. We are expecting this to be approved without too much changes because there's not too many brackets now. But it's important that this is also enshrined in the new framework, the one that will be negotiated, which is the next 10 years of work. So we are very, very solid and very concrete and powerful, and we would like to congratulate both the partners leading this process, ICLE, Regions for Committee of the Regions, global advisory boards of subnational governments and local governments, Secretariat of the CBT, and Edinburgh process partners, especially Scottish government and the UK government, who has communicated this to the biodiversity process. And one of the partners of the LGMA UK 100, they hosted their event, and this was concluded with a communique, which is demonstrating the ownership of the UK local and regional governments. Obviously, any engagement, any host country is much more powerful if their local and regional governments are engaged in the process. We have been working with COSLA, the Scottish Association. We have been obviously working with Glasgow City Council and Scottish government, but networks like LGA, UK 100, now recently also core cities of the UK. There is much more mobilization now. It's evolving. That's very powerful that UK partners are welcoming the COP into their country and taking it forward. In terms of negotiations, one important point we have to keep in mind that next week there will be a July ministerial. This is an extraordinary meeting. Traditionally, pre-COP, which is 1 month before, is the moment where ministers come on board. But because the negotiations are having some difficulties, because virtual negotiations are not so easy, obviously we have seen how challenging it was. We have also analyzed in our last webinar the pros and cons of virtual engagements. So the UK COP President designate Alok Sharma invited to have a ministerial consultation on the 25th and 26th of July in London. This will be in person. We will talk about this logistics and vaccines on COVID-19, but at least that's what they plan for. They have listed a set of questions, and this is the second time there is a ministerial meeting that UK is hosting. The first one was Climate and Development Ministerial in March. For this one in COP Ministerial, the UK government has introduced a new opportunity that they will ask our written submissions and they will upload it in the UNFCCC. That was a new information that came last week. So we will try to draft, not too detailed, but at least based on our previous submissions, based on our roadmap, we will circulate a draft and we can comment on it. Maybe if we can manage it, we can send it to the UNFCCC by Friday evening, the presidency. We will see how it will evolve. More information is coming up. One important thing, there is also a chapter on inclusive climate action, but there's no question on this agenda item. So we will try to make sure this is also being highlighted as appropriately, as equal with the other agendas. Let me see. No chats, no QA yet. So I'm continuing along these lines. So logistics updates. Obviously, it's a challenge for both the host and the UNFCCC under COVID procedures. At the moment, we are less than 150 days. Just in 1 or 2 weeks time, there will be 100 days to go announcements. But as of today, we still don't have too much clarity on many agendas. UK government has recently launched an offer for vaccination to the delegations. Delegations meaning both parties, but also non-party stakeholders, observers, or even press. And meanwhile, the procedures for side events, UNFCCC managed side events, which are for free, but also with special procedures, special rules, they have also kicked off. So as of today, we still don't have information about COP26 Blue Zone, but we have several processes going on. A number of observers have applied for Blue Zone side events and exhibits. Side events will be in person, as of today at least, and exhibits will be virtual. Applications for COP vaccination offer is also submitted. The UK responded to those applications with their quotas. And now in the next couple of days, before the 3rd of July, all these organizations who are requesting to get or involved in the vaccination campaign, they should confirm their names and persons to the UK and to the UNFCCC. Because they will, of course, afterwards, they will come through a process which we don't know the details too much. Therefore, it's an important point for all those who wish for the COP26 managed or led vaccinations. However, the Blue Zone delegations will be more than those who are vaccinated by the UK government. There will be several delegations who have their own, many delegations who are vaccinated or without vaccinated, because UK announced that vaccination is not a prerequisite to come into the UK. So the quota, the access to the Blue Zone will be announced by the end of August, or let's say 6th of September. So next month, between 2nd and 31st of August, the organizations will be communicating how many delegations they wish to bring to COP in person. UNFCCC then will process all these applications, and depending also the conditions of physical conditions of the host government information, they will announce certain quotas. It's a quota per organization. Then we will see how many of our delegations will be able to enter to the negotiations area. Once this is announced, starting from 6th of September, we will be able to confirm our names. They will get their badges. They will apply for visas, and the process will continue until the beginning of November, obviously. And of course, UK usually asks for visas. Therefore, starting from 6th of September, depending on the quotas, observers can nominate or confirm their delegations who will attend the negotiations area in the Blue Zone. Obviously, those who are familiar with the UK, the COP processes, there is a process called Green Zone. These are the areas which is managed by the host country. You don't need to have a UNFCCC approval for that. There will be certain announcements on that. The important thing is that the UNFCCC accreditation and visa support letter are only applying for the Blue Zone delegations, not for the Green Zone delegations. That is one of the most important difference you should be aware of. And by the end of September, UNFCCC managed COP and Blue Zone side events lists will also be announced. There is already a process where, because of the huge number of applications, UNFCCC is encouraging partners to merge their events. So everybody will sacrifice some of their speakers, some of their priorities, so that each 90 minutes event is a collaborative action. We are very happy from the LGMA constituency. We have a number of applications. We will see how this will be, how many of them will be approved, but we are very happy that there's so applications is robust. There is one thing that is not listed here is the COP26 pavilion space or Blue Zone, let's say, exhibit and pavilion space, office space. I will touch on it in a slightly in a minute. One thing that I would recommend that we don't forget, climate convention or COP is part of the 3 Rio Conventions legacy. This is the legacy of 1990, the Earth Summit. So there are several procedures that are similar. For example, in climate process, we have our conference of parties every year, whereas in biodiversity and the desertification every 2 years. The way accreditation and the processes are a bit different as well. However, there are certain things that are very, very standard for all these multilateral environmental agreement COPs. So the interesting thing is that this year, because of the delay from last year, the Biodiversity Conference of Parties, the 15th one, will also be hosted in Kunming, China this time in October, which is 3 weeks before the climate COP. What I've summarized here to you up in a couple of minutes ago, and you can see in the screen, this applies for climate COP, but for the biodiversity COP, we do not have such a calendar yet. And one of the reasons why it is not available is that there are very strong rumors or informal communications that the way biodiversity COP will be convened in Kunming in China 3 weeks before the climate COP is a bit different than what is being discussed with the UK. How that it is primarily expected to be a procedural and ceremonial COP, which means it's not the negotiators, but it is the people based in China, so that international travels are not disturbed. That embassies in China will nominate their speakers to the Kunming. They will mobilize their speakers. They will primarily ensure that the COP has been declared open, because every national government is represented by an ambassador or a diplomat. And the first thing they will do is that they will say that COP15 is open and the presidency is the baton, the responsibility is taken up from Egypt to the new presidency, which is China. Similar to the process we summarized for Chile and UK will apply for Egypt and China in the biodiversity process. Once this is done, actually, it will be the response of China politically. And what we are hearing that during this event, after this is done, there may be some high-level ministerial in-person or virtual sessions, heads of state level. This is important because in the biodiversity process, there were never a heads of state level engagement. We have seen climate COPs, Copenhagen 2009, which was a bit failure. We have seen in Paris Agreement, which was much better planned. In Marrakesh, in Bonn, in Katowice, in all the climate COPs, there were several heads of state. But in the biodiversity, except the host country, there was never a heads of state discussion. We had only one experience last year under the responsibility of the president of the General Assembly of the UN. There was a one-day biodiversity summit. It was virtual, but it was for the first time prime ministers, presidents have announced their commitment for biodiversity. So the efforts of the Chinese government to convene a heads of state level at the COP in COP on biodiversity will be unique, and we encourage, of course, we hope this could be success at the end. However, obviously, presidents, prime ministers do not negotiate. They make political announcements. They give political messages. Sometimes they make announcements, commitments, but they don't negotiate. So what will happen, we are expecting that after this heads of state level is finished, there may be some virtual events either before COP or during COP. And one of them will be local and regional government summits or subnational governments, cities and others, local authorities, which is the terminology used in the biodiversity process. This has been traditionally been hosted in the past 6 times, and this will be the 7th summit. It is ICLE who is coordinating on behalf of our focal point role, but Regions 4 and other partners like Committee of the Regions and the advisory committees will also be part of it, obviously with the CBD Secretariat. Exact timing is not announced yet because we will wait for the final decision. But this is how the biodiversity community is preparing. Therefore, they do not ask for accreditation for vaccines. They do not ask for physical side event applications. Obviously, they do not plan for anything on logistics like hotels or exhibit spaces. So the modality in China for biodiversity is slightly different. And the difficulty for all of us is that is not even announced as well. So neither the UNFCCC nor CBD neither the UK nor China any of them are communicating any official documents. What we are communicating to you are all those what we hear. But of course, it is important because if you do not know this, you cannot plan, you cannot manage your budgets or approvals, and everybody is waiting for hold. Just a second. This is some emergency at home, but let's continue. Yeah. Let me take you through a bit more further on the logistics updates, because as we said, unfortunately, official information is extremely limited and not too much explaining the details that we look forward. Therefore, over the past couple of weeks, as a focal point of role of ICLE, we try to share the information we heard, and so that it is not just limited to us, but all our members, all our partners, our constituencies are aware of it. So those updates regularly are shared in the email list, and you can join us if you want. We can include you. But our colleagues, time to time, are also offering help. And one of those was Felix Dodds, a traditional long-term champion of sustainability and friend of LGMA, especially with his role with Energy for ST as well, and all these processes. So in his blog, he has updated our updates, or he has, let's say, uploaded our updates in his blog. So you can see the links here. And the one that was released on 20th of July, we have also, on the 6th of July, we also shared our discussions about how can we respect or react to this COP26 vaccination offer of the UK government. And we have listed a couple of points to be clarified before we can decide on it. This depends on the quotas, this depends on the overall size, this depends on how many will be eligible in addition to those vaccinated by the UK. It's also depending on, because according to the current practices, even if you're vaccinated, you cannot enter freely. You have to have tests, and there are several procedures. For example, recently announced procedure says that even if you are vaccinated from an amber list countries, if you are not vaccinated by the UK officials, your vaccines will not be accepted. That therefore you have to go through 10 days compulsory quarantine period, which is costly, which is taking huge time. So any person, be it a national government, be it an observer like us, if they wish to attend, there will be huge risks and huge consequences, financially, technically, politically. That is not so easy to handle. Therefore, we wanted all this to be clarified. From ICLE's side, we waited for the information that didn't come. Therefore, as an individual organization, not as a focal point of LGMA, but as an accredited observer organization, in the case of LGMA, we have around 25 of them. And in the whole UNFCCC, we have 2,500 organizations accredited. So in the case of ICLE, we decided internally that we will not make any application for vaccines because the concerns, the ambiguities that we have listed still prevail. Therefore, we cannot take this risk. But we can expect some partners of LGMA or others may have applied. So we are encouraging all our partners to inform us if they are experiencing or they are going through this vaccination process. But ICLE will not go through this process. And if there's any update from those partners, feel free to share with us so that we can have lessons learned. A couple of days ago, or let's say last week or so, the UK presidency also officially announced their priorities across the 12 days of COP. Let's remember, COP is extended to 31st of October, Sunday. It is procedural opening. It overlaps with the G20 Heads of State Summit in Italy. And the official World Leaders Summit, which will be first and second, which is the same model of the Paris in 2015, will be the big, let's say, high-level engagement. How we our local and regional governments or overall observers will be engaged, we don't know yet. In the Paris case, we were not invited. It was only heads of state. We were not able to enter into the rooms. We were not able to interact. Whether it will happen like that, we don't know. The rest of the days, UK presidency has highlighted several themes, and one of them is on the November 11th, which is Thursday, the day before the COP concludes, or let's say officially is scheduled to conclude, cities, regions, and built environment. So that is what the UK has announced. Just a week before this announcement, we have also made this assessment into our information. We are happy that what we have communicated to LGMA before is consistent with what is announced later on. So under this condition, the question will be, under the COVID measures, and you are following, UK is also going through some experiences, and new models are being implemented. So it's still too early to guess which ones of these will be in person, which ones will be virtual. Therefore, we have to be careful. And last slide of today's, the one last before, is our plans for a Blue Zone Pavilion. As we said, Blue Zone Pavilion is unique because it is the one only accredited observers can attend, the negotiators and accredited observers. We believe it's important that we have this pavilion this year. We did not have it before. The first and only Blue Zone Pavilion we hosted as ICLE, as LGMA, was in Copenhagen. The other pavilions we hosted was in green zones. So we believe it's important. However, both costs and the design of this process is still not in the, let's say, best way we can say. And it's no one's fault, very likely, because there's a rush to the time. It's COVID conditions. So for example, we still don't know the options for interior design. We don't know how much this will cost. So as a minimum, we would like to have a 100-meter square space, which will be mainly a networking, so that we can have a number of sessions, which we'll go through now. The good news is that we are, as ICLE, we have been confirmed with Scottish government that that kind of a space will be, the majority of the costs will be covered by the Scottish government support, financial support. However, we are aware that this may not be enough. Therefore, we also would like to get some crowdsourcing or cost sharing. This depends, obviously, what is the format of this space, how will be engaged, how much will be in person, how much will be virtual. So what we are thinking, that regardless of whether it's in person or virtual, what we can think in such a space, we could have our daily LGMA briefings. We have our side events, that is following the UNFCCC and UK agenda. Let's remember, all those other agendas are also open for trade unions, environmental groups, women and gender, all stakeholders. So a space for LGMA members are always helpful, so that we can have our own agendas, we can define our own, let's say, coordinations of all these processes. So it's always helpful. We'd like to have this side event. We would like to have spatial dialogues with the negotiators, especially the Friends of Multi-Level Action, so that we could still influence the UNFCCC COP26 outcome documents. We can have interviews, especially if it is virtual. We can have a number of, let's say, talks, and we can communicate worldwide. And we can also host or use this place to host some of our events or release of reports, whatever. In terms of our suggested partnership, that's based on the experience we had in the past, is that we as ICLE will be volunteering to host, as convene this process, convene this mechanism as the LGMA focal point. The host is Scottish government, based on their financial contributions to this process. We are expecting to have co-hosts, even financially or in-kind contributions. It also reflects ownership. We have been in touch with Glasgow City Council. We will check how will this be formulated. We have heard from another UK local government, which is the City of Bristol, which was the host of the Cities and Regions Pavilion COP 2015. Based on that, they were the European Green Capital at that time. We still believe it's a valuable, let's say, offer. The Sao Paulo government is also offering exploring opportunities, and there may be others, so that local and regional governments, independent from those in Scottish government, could be part of co-hosts, depending on the agreements we can come up with. Then we can have program partners, those who would host such sessions and events. We could think about thematic partners, so that's not necessarily a network of local and regional governments, but it could be partners like SlowCat, like Rent21, these kind of partners we can always work together with. We can have media partners to communicate our outcomes, and we can have other partners. They can be sponsors, they can be UN agencies which we are working together. So that type of a model we have tested in Bonn, we have tested in Paris, we have tested this in Marrakesh. I think we can comfortably come up. Obviously, in the past, the biggest advantage was that we did not have anything called COVID pandemic measures. This time it is the challenge. Nobody knows the physical conditions. Nobody knows how and who will be entering into the UK. So it is a challenge for all of us, but we are confident we can all handle it together. Definitely, this pavilion will be strongly connected to the green zone, because we know the green zone is managed by the UK government. We will have some interactions with them. We will have events with them. We are aware COSLA and other partners have already submitted proposals. We are aware there will be a screening. We also have applied for an event in the IMAX studio as LGMA focal point. So we will make sure that blue zone and green zone are in synergy. We would like to make sure Glasgow, Scottish government, they're also hosting events in the Glasgow zone. In particular, whether we will have a summit of leaders of local and regional governments, it's still possible to expect a final decision sometimes in the next couple of days and weeks, based on the updates from the UK government on terms of the logistics, so that all this is possible on the table. So with this, the last thing I would like to mention is the upcoming agendas. Obviously, this week we will be seeing tomorrow and onwards the G20 Climate and Ministerial Summit. Next week there will be COP26 ministerial. There will be, I mean, we're expecting August to be a bit relatively silent, but in starting of September, UN agenda will be coming up. There will be elections in Germany. It will influence the whole discussions as well. US Conference of Mayors will have their own conference, which outcome will also help the US position as well. And starting with the pre-COP 30th of September, we'll have a lot of discussions and in events, starting with our second ministerial mayor event with UCLG, ICLA, GCOM, UNEP, UN Habitat, and UNDP. And Urban October is our biggest, let's say, opportunity to make a big noise before COP starts. Obviously, biodiversity COP will be an important agenda, and we will conclude the Urban October by chance. It will also conclude by the G20 summit. Let's see how we will be engaged with that. So with this, I thank you very much for your patience. I know it's not easy to follow all these with one person speaking, but I see now chats and Q&A boxes are filled with input. So while reading this, I will also encourage you to raise your hands if you want to intervene. So let me read the chat box messages. Eloise from Regions 4. Thank you so much for this very useful presentation. It's really important that UK presently allows for physical meetings to always have a virtual option, knowing all the difficulties for delegates to attend the meeting. Would you know the timeline when the LGMA pavilion request will be approved, and what would be the process to request events for members of LGMA constituents and the pavilion? Would it allow for a virtual option? There's another feedback or input from Eamon Lely from LGA. Yunus, what is the process for expressing an interest in being a co-host and for decisions on this matter? That all two of them are slightly relevant, so I will touch upon it. There's also a question and answer box which is typed by Agat from C40, and she's also secondee to the high-level champions. Hello, has ICLA submitted a request for badges for the first time? This first time, or will you wait until the second window? What do you make of the fact there are 2 windows for nomination confirmation? Is it crowd management? Agat has another question on your concerns over the vaccination offer. What do you expect the next steps be? How can the LGMA mobilize itself to stress our concerns towards the host? So what I suggest, we have time, and all these speakers are familiar names of the LGA. Agat and Heloise, if you want, you can also turn on your mic, and you can also verbally express your points. We can also have a dialogue as such, and I will also share the same to Eamon. But if not, I can also respond first in regards to this accreditation. Maybe Agat's question could be coming easily. So the process is it was ambiguous in the sense that UK and UNFC said that if you can nominate all your delegations, send it now with the deadline of 14th of July. But they say that it is not a must, so you can wait. So therefore, ICLA did not make any nominations in the first round, which is already closed. So you are not able to nominate if you haven't done anything by the 14th of July. ICLA did not nominate any name because it was purely for vaccination. We know this, we knew this, or we have shared this before. Even though UNFCCC encouraged all of us to send the nominations before. So we did not send our COP26 delegation list yet. We will follow the process in August, so that any blue zone accreditation list should be communicated in August. So ICLA will follow this process. This could include some of those who are vaccinated or not. It's up to the organizations who have to decide on that. Obviously, the nominations doesn't guarantee that they will get the badge, because after receiving the nominations, UNFCCC will look how many they have received applications and how many the blue zone logistically can accommodate at any given time. They will combine these two demands and possibilities, and taking into account the other delegations like UNFCCC and media, and they will then submit. If you have asked for 100, if you have asked for 10, if you are asked for 5, it doesn't matter. They will send you how much you get as a delegation, and this will be the number of people you can confirm. Once you have these numbers, then you can decide who will be getting these tickets or the access. So that is how the process will go forward. Agat, if there's anything still unclear, feel free to respond. On the vaccination, we have sent, I don't know how many times, UK government is just going on their own how they wish to plan this. You can expect, I am expecting there will be serious announcements in the next couple of days, especially with the COP26 ministerial next week. The agenda doesn't have anything on vaccination offer, but I'm sure they're having discussions. And obviously, let's be realistic. If they do not confirm their plans for physical plans to COP, it is very, very late for anyone, because August is traditionally, I mean, we are living in both Northern Hemisphere, but and also Southern Hemisphere. But for the Northern Hemisphere, a lot of organizations are having less staff capacity. So if they miss the announcement of the logistical details by the end of July, anything they will offer will be extremely difficult. So I'm sure they are taking this into account. For your questions, Eamon and Heloise, first of all, the pavilion request, the deadline was 2nd of July. We don't know whether any other LGMA member have applied for a COP26 Blue Zone pavilion, because it's costly. It is £400 per meter square plus VAT. This is pounds, and the additional service costs are also not announced, which is if you want to have a seat, a chair, a desk, a screen, these are the costs are not available yet. So we are all waiting for this information to be provided to us, so that then we can make a realistic cost estimation, and then we can approach all of you saying that, look, that percentage of this we are able to cover with the Scottish government funding. We need additional funds, and if you would like to host an event, you can contribute by a certain amount of numbers of euros or pounds, so that the whole process could be convened together. And in terms of co-hosts, we will circulate an announcement for all interested partners in terms of how would be the responsibilities and opportunities to be a co-host, what it means for a program partner. We hope that this could come by probably beginning of August, because we really want to see some more information available. But we would like to communicate this to you as early as possible, so that you can also plan for it. We are aware this also needs approval from your boards or executive committees. So we're aware of the consequences, but we would like to get as much as information as possible. Probably in the next 10 days or so, we can circulate you a bit more, let's say, estimated modality, so that you can start to discuss. And even if it is not clear, you can still respond. The same applies to Heloise. We have 8 more minutes. The floor is open. You can still intervene either as a response to this question, or add additional questions as well. Or you can also raise your points. You don't have to ask a question, but you can also share any update you have that we didn't address, or anything is missing that is important.
Good morning, Yunus. This is Agathe.
Hi, Agathe. How are you?
I'm good. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this webinar this morning. I think, the question of the accreditation and the related vaccination offer is of huge concern to us as well. We've also not submitted requests this first time around in this first window. Mostly from our perspective at C40, because it's so early we don't know who we would give those badges to. And we would need to know for certain in order for those people to then access the vaccine and so on. So I really share all of your concerns, and it would mean, a world of difference if in the second window for nomination and confirmation, if there would be then again the offer for vaccines, because we'll have better visibility. So we're really supportive of your asks to the presidency, and I really want to stress, if we can discuss what would be a helpful action to do, would a letter make a big difference from some of our network leads? I'm really happy to discuss this over the next couple of weeks. And otherwise, yes, thank you so much for everything else.
Thanks, Agat. It's really very, very helpful and also valuable that to see that we're all aligned and share the concerns. Obviously, one of the issues about vaccines is it's not just vaccines. As you have said, the new procedures, even if you're vaccinated, you may not be entering. So a lot of things to be questioned. Your proposal of sending a letter could be worthwhile to discuss today. There will be focal points coordination call with the UK presidency once again. It could also be possible, maybe Agat, taking into account the role of Mayor Garcetti as C40 chair, as a member of Friends of COP. Maybe we can also use this opportunity, because that's a valuable, let's say, window that we have now in our hands. Maybe we can also use this so that we can benefit from the leadership of Mayor Garcetti, but also we could consider a joint letter. I mean, honestly speaking, because so many responses were sent to the UK presidency, I do not expect a new opening, because even if they get the list of those people, it has to be managed. I mean, they still didn't announce. Imagine if we nominate a person from Africa or Asia and anywhere in the world. What is the process? There are several say that, is it either UK embassy or is it the World Health Organization? How will they benefit? We also asked this question about what will happen if someone is vaccinated and then having some health issues. Who is the responsibility for these kind of things? I mean, huge liabilities exist here. So I don't think for the vaccines they will open the doors again. But this issue about in-person and virtual and asking them to be clear as quick as possible would be very, very extremely relevant. As I said, next week's ministerial, COP26 ministerial, the agenda doesn't have a point, but we can always ask this to be included. As I said, the meeting is on Monday and Tuesday next week. They are asking us to send written inputs into the questions that I showed you in the chart, in the presentation. In addition to, and I don't want to go into too much of the details of these topics, we can have 1 or 2 lines, just very brief, but we can also include such a point on our submission, saying that in addition to the questions raised, the physical planning of COP26 is extremely important. We are concerned of the delay. The clarification as quick as possible is important. And we always say that please look at what UK, what China and Biovirus is doing. It's impossible to expect the 2 COPs to be 180 degrees different in terms of practices. So what I suggest, Agat, let's continue this discussion in the next couple of days, and let's see whether we can come up with a process. And once again, contribution of Mayor Garcetti as Friends of COP will always be appreciated.
Hey,
yeah,
Eunice?
sure.
Eloise here. No,
Good.
thank you so much. And just to bounce back on what Agat was saying, I think if we add a section on the logistics for next week, I think it's important that we request as a minimum that there is always a virtual option. We're having a lot of regions from Africa and Latin America that are telling us that it's going to be almost impossible for them to come to the COP given all these difficulties. And we want to make sure that obviously it's an inclusive COP. So at the minimum, there needs to be an assurance that any side event or anything that's organized in pavilions or others has a virtual option to be inclusive to that voice from the South. And that needs to be, kind of, we need to know that as soon as possible by the UK presidency.
Yeah, fully agreed. I mean, Eloise, you can imagine there are also concerns that some partners feel virtual is not inclusive as well because of all these technical issues. Let's remember there was a practice which was very, very unique. At the same time in June, when UNFCCC was having their not negotiations but virtual consultations, the biodiversity COP process also had their consultation as well, and in that sense they were even advanced and they were even deciding on some of the documents, which was not the case in the UNFCCC. And there were some concerns raised by the African group that virtual elements were not helpful. However, the same African group were very happy with the climate process negotiations because the US government, the UNESCO Secretariat, and the UNDP organized a special African climate hub hosted in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, so that all the African negotiators were able to travel to Egypt. The limitations were not that much severe in the case of Egypt. So they sent several negotiators to Egypt. They stayed there, they accommodated there, or some of them interacted virtual as well, and they united their positions and communicated this into the sessions via African Climate Negotiators Hub. And interestingly, this also helped Egypt to play a powerful role. They were the host of Biodiversity COP, as you can remember, 2019, and now they are proposed by the African group as the host for the COP of climate next round, whether it's 2022 or 23, we don't know. But such a practice has been experienced. In any case, my point is that we, realistically speaking, the practice that is China and biodiversity is planning, which is not being officially announced, but is on the way, which is a procedural ceremonial COP in person, no negotiations, virtual elements, and the real process is postponed to next year, is the most safest, most appropriate, most realistic plan. I don't know whether they will agree on this kind of a plan. This is what we're hearing. And I expect, honestly speaking, even though UK presidency have did their best to convene COP in the most inclusive, in an in-person manner, it is impossible to materialize like that. Given the time constraints, given the conditions in the UK, given the conditions in Scotland, it is impossible, period. However, UK government is insisting not to accept this for the time being. I may be wrong. I may be wrong in my assessment, but as of today, I cannot see any possibilities. My realistic scenario for COP in Glasgow is that it will be opened in person. It may be possible that there may be negotiators, one or two, but mainly ambassadors in the UK from London traveling to Glasgow, from England to Scotland. They present their governments with their flags, and that they declare on the Sunday, 31st of October, the COP is opened. The Chilean government hands over the presidency to UK. This can be procedural done by any ambassador in the UK that they can convene this 193 countries or 200 countries in the world. And then they start with the heads of state. They can manage heads of state. The rest, I'm expecting to be virtual. The challenge for all of us is that under these conditions, how many of us will be wishing to travel to COP? If this is the case, how it looks like to have a pavilion in the blue zone, or whether a blue zone side events or pavilions would make sense. I don't have this answer. So a hybrid model is even harder to consider or to plan compared to 100% virtual or 100% in-person meetings. A hybrid model is much difficult to plan for, because it's not just the side event, it's not just presentations. These people are going to COPs, the national governments are going to COPs for decision making, and they say that if decision making conditions are not met, we don't have to do this. And side events, any celebrations could also be done, and they could be saying that we want to focus on our NDCs. NDCs can be announced with multi-level or whatever before COP at home, and the heads of state who goes to Glasgow can announce this. For this, nobody can stop, and nobody could the conditions of COVID doesn't prevent anyone to do that like that. But having negotiations is the challenge, and we are hearing Geneva as the UN hub for many negotiations on trade and health and others. They are willing to host several negotiations even before COP in September or October, or in 2022 for biodiversity and climate as well. So options are on the table, as long as you do not unnecessarily insist to have an in-person negotiation mode COP in Glasgow this year. For me personally, it's impossible to make it, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are things that I didn't have been informed, I didn't have thought about, and some genius let's say preparations are in the baskets, and it will come up soon, and we will all celebrate the success. I mean, if they can manage it, that's fine, but I am extremely cautious. So we are about to come to end of our time. It's already 4 minutes past. Sorry for this delay. If there's no burning question, I would like to declare this session closed. We will keep the recording and share with you. We'll send the presentation to you. We'll have an afternoon session, obviously, and we will follow up, especially with this communication to the to the UK presidency, based on the discussions we have. But we are very grateful for all your support and contributions as the LGMA family, and we'll stay in touch. And with this, I'd like to wish you all a nice day.